Podcast Answer Man, episode number 103. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Answer Man. Cliff Ravenscraft here. And as promised, I am ready to bring to you finally some more down-to-earth, minute-by-minute, day-by-day little tips and tricks to help you with your podcasting. Getting back to the questions and answers that I think you guys are longing to hear. That's right, folks. Now, don't get me wrong. My format of the Podcast Answer Man is always ever-changing. So who knows? Next week, we might have another panel discussion or I might have another interview. But I have all intentions to bring to you some very short, sweet, to-the-point episodes dealing with very time-sensitive questions and answers for those of you who are seeking to get some advice. Now, just so you know, before I get started, I am available for podcast consulting. At the time that I'm recording this, which this could change in the future, but at the time that I'm recording this, I charge $95 per hour for my phone consulting. And we do a minimum of 1 hour, and I bill for 15-minute increments, anything over that 1 hour. And I would love to work with you personally, one-on-one, and that's my advertising for this episode of the Podcast Answer Man. Now, with that said, if you want to try to get some free advice out of me, that's not a problem. I love doing what I do, folks, and I love helping you. I hope you guys understand that. The only reason I'd ever charge money is because, well, I got to put food on the table for the wife and the kids, you know? Me personally, I could stand, if you saw my gut, you'd know that I could probably go without food for a while. But the wife and the kids, you know, they're always looking forward to nice warm heat in the wintertime. A little air conditioning in the summertime doesn't hurt here in Cincinnati, and they always like that food on the table. And some of them even want to eat 3 times a day, if you can imagine. Anyway, but enough of that. So let's just go straight into a question and answer. This comes from, I'll just say, Sister Julie. Sister Julie is somebody who was referred to me from somebody over at SQPN. And those of you who have not checked out SQPN, it's the Star Quest Production Network. It's an all-Catholic network of podcasts. Some great folks over there. In fact, if you want, you could go back into the archives, and I'm going to just keep talking and talking while I go to podcastanswerman.com. I am going to now scroll down, and I want to find out what episode I interviewed Father Roderick, because that was a great interview. I enjoyed doing it, and I think it was 94, but I'm going to check. This is something I should have looked up. Oh, boy. I think it was maybe episode 92 now. Now, see, this is where doing live and live to hard drive is not always the greatest thing, because now I have no idea where that is, and yeah, now I'm actually considering restarting this episode. But you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm going to show you that, you know what? You're probably not sick and tired of me. Just this, if anything, let this be an example that you don't have to go out and edit everything out of your podcast. In fact, I'm looking now, and it was episode 92 of the Podcast Answer Man. Father Roderick is the founder, the CEO of SQPN. And anyway, I listened to all his episodes and just love the Daily Breakfast. And as a result, I call in a lot to his show, and I've developed relationships with him, with many of his audience. Many of his audience listen to my shows, and not only that, but several of the podcasters that podcast on SQPN have now come to me for consulting work and equipment sales. And so anyway, one of the podcasters from SQPN referred Sister Julie over to me, and she is getting ready to do some awesome stuff in podcasting. Now, she's already an avid blogger, and we worked together yesterday to really find just the right amount of equipment to really do what she wants to do. So here's what she said. We had already talked about all the equipment that she's going to try to purchase, and she wrote back and she goes, "Wow, I already have a question. I noticed that you use WordPress for your site. So it's robust enough to handle the podcasting and streaming video. So that's a question. She says she wasn't aware of the fact that you could do streaming, video, and also podcasting and everything else on WordPress. And she's asking that question. She goes, I'm using WordPress right now solely for the blog, but I would like it to have it so that the podcast has a place of their own to live, a clearly defined podcast section, along with a blog section, even though the blog is the biggest part of the website now. Is there more that I need other than the WordPress software? Do I need something built into it? Sorry for all the questions. We are actively writing the grant proposal, which is due Friday, and I want to make sure I got all the costs covered in order to get this podcasting off the ground. I value your time and expertise, and I will be happy to cover consulting fees if my questions are beyond the free advice level. Sister Julie. All right, so I told her, I said, Sister Julie, hey, look, I'll tell you what, so that I don't have to bill you for this and so that other people can benefit from this advice, I'd love to just record an episode of the podcast Answer Man. And so basically, here is what I'm going to tell her. If you go to podcastanswerman.com, I encourage everybody to do this. Just go to podcastanswerman.com. When you pull up the page, on the right-hand side, everything is static. The header, static. The navigation menu, static. Everything's the same. But the first thing, the biggest, hugest part of the site, when you first look at it and it draws your attention to the left-hand column of the page, that right there is technically the first stream of information. It's the first thing I want you to read no matter when you come to the site. And hopefully, if you come to the site a couple of days a week, my goal is that this thing changes, throughout the week on a regular basis. So when you come to my site, it's never the same thing, So in essence, what I have here is it always shows the most recent post. Now, she's asking, can I do a podcast section and a blog section? Absolutely. You can certainly do that. Here is what I suggest, though. I suggest that you make it easy for people who only want to see your blog entries, give them the ability to only see your blog entries. Give the option and the ability for the folks who only want to see your podcast episodes, that they have the option to only go and see those podcast episodes. But when it comes to the main homepage, like mine is podcastanswerman.com, I want my viewers or my readers of my site, or the visitors, I guess that's the best thing. I want the visitors of my site to always see the most recent episode or most recent post, if you will, that I've made on my site. For example, if I were to now I have 4 categories at this current time. One is called podcast show notes. One is called tech tips. One is new media news, and press and testimonials. Now, if I were to do a tech tip, which would be a blog entry, or if I were to do a new media news entry on my site, which is a blog entry, that's a blogging category, what would happen would be, let's just say I did iPhone for the Kindle, or Kindle for the iPhone application review, and that would be my new media news. And that would be a blog entry. What would happen is if I posted that right now, it would immediately be the top front and center post on the homepage of my site. That's not a podcast episode, it's a blog entry. But then if I release this podcast, which is episode number 103, if I put a post on my site listing Podcast Answer Man episode number 103, that's going to be on top of the blog entry on the Kindle. So what if you scroll down my page on the very homepage of podcastanswerman.com, you should see some kind of mixture between blog entries and podcast entries. And they're intermingled in with each other. And of course, where Sister Julie says right now she's primarily a blog, I'm primarily a podcast. So chances are you're going to see more podcasts as you scroll down than you will see blog entries. But that can change back and forth at any time without any warning whatsoever. However, here's what I do. Now, if you look at my navigation menu and the bottom navigation, if you want to see just all the Podcast Answer Man show notes, which means just the podcast section, and you can even title the category. And by the way, all of this is done through categories. So you do a category called blog, and you do a category called podcast. And it could be as simple as that. And then what you could do is if you have, let's just say you have a blog, but each of your blogs have different categories. You've kind of given them, this is my how-to category. This is my Apple category. This is my whatever category. Well, you can actually create those as child categories of the parent category blog or the child category of the parent category podcast. There's so much to do, and I understand that may seem kind of, what's he just saying? What language is that, Cliff? I understand that's confusing, but basically, I'll give you a perfect example of this. Since you're in front of your computer, and for those of you driving in the car, don't feel like you're missing out. I think you'll be able to follow along. But if you go to gspn.tv sometime when you're back around in front of your computer, you'll see that in the sub-navigation menu, you'll see many categories there. You'll see entertainment podcasts, faith podcasts, general interest podcasts, and technology podcasts. Now, if you hover over that, then you'll see, if you just put your mouse right over top of entertainment podcasts, then you see Desperate Housewives, Doctor Who, Grey's Anatomy, Heroes, Hannah Montana. My daughter does a Hannah Montana podcast. Or used to anyway. Musically Challenged, Private Practice. If you go over to General Interest, you see the Community Voice. Though the reason why that drop-down menu underneath the categories comes down because I added a category in my WordPress for the Community Voice podcast, let's say. And the category is called Community Voice Podcast. And there's an option that says make this a parent of what category. And you can leave that blank, and that just means it's a main category. Just like it would be... On Podcast Answer Man, it would be show notes, or it would be blog, podcast, community voice podcast. But we don't want that. We want community voice to fall under we want it to be a subcategory, if you will, of the category general interest podcast. So I created a category called general interest podcasts. And then I created other categories and made them a subcategory of general interest podcasts. So when I created community voice podcast, I said the parent of this category is general interest. When I created Family from the Heart, I said the parent of this category is general interest. When we did Full-Time Mom podcast, that is the parent of that, or the main category for this subcategory is general interest podcast. So there's a lot you can do, and it's beautiful how WordPress will automatically organize all this for you. You really don't have to do very much web design at all, although you may need to do some. And I'm not going to pretend that you won't want to tweak your system and stuff like that, because you really will. So here's the situation. So if you come to my site and all you see are, let's just say that recently there's just been a lot of new media news happening, and I've done very few Podcast Answer Man episodes in between. Well, you come to my homepage and you see a lot of blog entries, but you're really just interested in browsing and hitting the play button from the website on just my podcast episodes, because you want to be able to hear them while you're working in the background. Let's just say that. Well, you come to my site, and all you do is click on the subcategory, or on the category called Podcast Show Notes. And when you do that, now it looks very much the same as it did before, except that on the left-hand side, you're only getting a list of my podcast episodes. So it's all in chronological order. There will be no random blog entries in there. It's just chronological order of my previous podcast episodes. And at the bottom, when you get down to the limited number, you can choose how many episodes you'll show in a row on the page. And then at the bottom, when it clicks next page, it will just go to the next page of that category. Now, if all you were interested in, it's like, listen, I subscribe to this podcast. I don't care anything about his podcast show notes because I've already heard everything I need and I know where to go to get that stuff. If he mentions a link, then it's in the show notes. So I just want to see his blog entries on tech tips. Well, if you click that, then it will only show blog entries that are tech tips. Now, here's a little thing. Right now, I'm looking at this, and I just hit it. And, of course, I clicked Tech Tips, and episode 99 is the very first entry right now as I'm recording is episode 99, which is a podcast show notes for the FeedBurner Google transition. Why is that? Well, I actually tagged that as a podcast, and I also tagged that as a Tech Tips blog entry. And the reason why is because that blog is very much information about a tech tip on how to transfer your FeedBurner feeds from FeedBurner over to Google and all the things that go along with that. So basically, one of the things that I would love to just point out is that when you do a podcast, sure, it's audio, sure, it's video, whatever the case may be. In my opinion, when we post that to our site, I don't follow this through myself, and so I'm going to confess to you that I am a hypocrite in this area. But generally, the thing about this is, if you really want to hone in your skills and to do things the way I feel like it ought to be done, and again, I don't do this, you should have a blog entry for every episode of your podcast. And episode 99 of my podcast is a perfect example of this. So if you go to Tech Tips and it pulls up episode 99 of Podcast Answer Man, of course, there's the play button because it is a podcast episode. There's the ability to download it. And it says here, in this episode, I share my updated thoughts on the FeedBurner/Google server transfer. I mentioned the January 19th blog post, which there's a link to take you back to that blog post if you haven't read it or if you want to, where I personally suggested that you wait to do the transfer. I'm happy to announce that Google seems to have resolved most every issue, blah, 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 blah. And then, oh, by the way, FeedBurner My Brand users, here's some information for you. And so it's very much a very short and brief blog entry as well. So your podcasts episodes can be blog entries. So, for example, Sister Julie is doing an interview with somebody from a convent that is doing some new and amazing things through ministry and stuff like that. And let's just say she went there personally to interview a nun that was working at the convent. So while there, maybe she has the ability to take a photo of, I don't know, but let's just say she took a photo of the person that she's interviewing. She took a photo of this beautiful area and this atmosphere. Maybe the new and amazing thing she's doing is they're doing care packages for people in the hospital, and she could take pictures. She could take a picture of that, or whatever the case may be. Now the thing is that sure, this is an audio episode, but what you do is you come back to your WordPress. You of course title it in such a way that it's pretty clear and obvious that it is a podcast episode, and you have a button where people can press play. That's a very important. Even though you're going to be downloaded most of the time, you want to have it to where those who come to your blog that don't know you do a podcast, well, all of a sudden now they see that there's this play button. What's this? And they hit play, and it's like, oh wow, she's doing this audio show. And they may have no clue that what a podcast is, but you're a blogger. They come and read you regularly. Now, if all you do is have a play button in the title of your episode and you have a little link that says click here to download, well, guess what? Chances are it's like, what's this? There's nothing here for me to read. So what you do is you put it in there as you would any other podcast episode. Make a button for them to play. Put a link to download and put in there, in this podcast episode, I interview so-and-so from such and such, put links to wherever they can get more information. But then what you do this, take about 15 minutes and write 3 to 5 paragraphs about your interview. What's in this interview? Highlights about, hey, if you're listening to this, here's the highlights of this. And then any kind of things that, kind of don't necessarily get transferred well through audio, perhaps you want to take that picture, that photo that you did, shrink it down into a size that fits nicely inside your post area. And therefore, in essence, what you've done is you've taken this audio podcast and turned it into also a very eloquently posted, very beautiful blog entry as well. And if you do this on a consistent basis and you get great at it, then what you're doing is the people who find you on iTunes, or they hear about you from another podcaster and they come and look you up in iTunes and they subscribe to your podcast. Guess what you say at the end? It's like, listen, I had such a fun time interviewing so-and-so, And in fact, we sort of talked about how beautiful the place was. We talked about how awesome these packages look, but you really don't get the full feel of it unless you actually see it. In fact, I posted some great photos on the show notes section of this particular episode. You can find that over at my site at suchandsuch.com. Just look for episode such and such, because you gotta say that, because you guys might be, this is episode 103, but you might be listening to this not in March of 2009. You right now, I'm talking to you. You might be listening to this in March of 2011. So you'll have to go back and search for episode 103. Way back in the archives. But you see what I'm saying? And so what you've done is now you've said, hey, there is something amazing that corresponds. If you found this interview interesting, wouldn't you like to see the person that you've just heard me interview? Wouldn't you like to see what they look like? Come to the site, there's a picture. And not only that, come see all this beautiful scenery we talked about. Or there's, maybe they're in a movie or something, and you put a link to the movie or whatever the case may be, but turn it into a blog. And then your podcast episodes, every podcast episode is a blog entry, but it's a different category from maybe your normal stuff. So yeah, WordPress can definitely do this. And if you wanted to do it, you separate it. You can actually set WordPress to have just a main page. And if you can imagine your header at the top, and then on the middle of the screen, you could actually really separate. You could say, if you're looking for my blog, click here. And that takes them just to the blog posts. If you're looking for my podcast, click here. And then they'll click there, and it'll take them just to the podcast entries. The chances are, though, my favorite thing is, why not take your podcast audience? Why not take your blog reading audience? And why not connect those people to each other and cross-promote each of those things that you're doing? So in my opinion, keeping everything on one page there, I have some clients, and you know who you are. In fact, I can think of it right now. I do have a client, and he's doing an awesome job with his podcast. But his podcast, if you go to his site that he encourages you to come and visit, actually he sends you to a main site that will take you to all the different aspects of what he does. But excuse me, what I suggest doing is having your blog and your podcast all in the same place. Now, the reason my one client that I'm specifically thinking off the top of my head, he's had a blog at this one place for the longest time, and it wasn't necessarily the best platform. The place where it's at isn't the best platform for podcasting, so we went with WordPress. But in the future, who knows? Maybe he'll move his blog over to WordPress and keep everything with this. But he's got two different brands. His blog is a brand, and he definitely had a brand in mind when he came to the podcast. So I don't know. I don't think that it's wrong to do it that way. But if in my opinion, if you're starting from scratch and you're not definitely looking to do separate branding, but instead you're reaching the same audience, then this is a great way to cross-pollinate and cross-promote your different brands. In fact, Sister Julie and everybody else that's listening here, when you go to gspn.tv, I'm getting ready to actually launch a blog section of our site so that it will show definitely all the most recent blog entries also. And so, I'm sorry, let me just say this again. In the future, when you go to gspn.tv, it will only show up blog entries. Okay, and it'll show all the different categories of blog entries, but it will only show blog entries. It will not show podcast episodes as they're being released. And this can be done through some coding in the background where you're telling to only call a certain category and display it on the page. So it can be done. No problem whatsoever. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to use that blog, and I'm going to blog about specific episodes and other various things outside of podcasting for the gspn.tv community, but I'm doing it all on one installation. I have more than 20 podcasts running off of one WordPress installation. It can be done through category RSS feeds. If any of this sounds appealing to you, these are the things that I do for consulting. If you're interested, I do, like I said, I mentioned my rates earlier in this episode. I'm going to give you my phone number. I'm going to start doing this in this podcast. I tell everybody it's not a Grand Central number. Please, I'm giving you my cell phone number, folks. Just be cautious of how often you choose to use it. But if you're looking for audio equipment and you want to talk to me, please don't hesitate to call me. I'd love to give you a free consultation on the audio equipment that's right for you. And of course, I sell any kind of audio equipment that you might need. And before I wrap this up, let me start hitting some music in the background here. So audio equipment, I'd love to get you the right equipment that's for you. One of the great things about getting audio equipment from me is that you're going to get all the little cables and the adapters that you're going to need. The funny thing about getting these mixers, they usually have some old, antiquated, 1/4 inch phone jack connectors, and sometimes you want to be able to plug in an RCA adapter or a plug, and you're not going to be able to do that without special adapters. And when you buy from me, not only do you get the equipment that you need, but you get all the wires and the cables and the advice. And sometimes you also get that follow-up call when you get the equipment and say, hey, I need some help hooking this up. And if you buy a package from me, you do get that for free as well. Also, I am available for consulting one-on-one. Now, if you call me for that, then what will happen is we'll probably set up when you do call, we'll talk about whether or not I'm able to help you with what it is that you want consulting with, and we will schedule that time. You can also email me, Cliff, CLIFF, at podcastanswerman.com. And I think that'll pretty much do it. Sister Julie, thank you very much. I'm so glad to have your question here, and hopefully this has helped open up some folks' minds as to what WordPress can do for you. Can you use a lot of other services out there for podcasting? Can you use Blogger? Yes. Can you use WordPress.com? Yes. Can you use LiveJournal? Yeah. Can you use Tumblr? Sure you can. Would I suggest that you do any of those from my own professional advice? If it's for a hobby, why not? It's not going to hurt anything. If it's for anything other than a hobby, if it's something you're really seriously interested in, WordPress is the way to go. Not WordPress.com, but your own installation, your own hosted account of WordPress. And if that seems a little too daunting for you, but you definitely want to do it, get in touch with me for some consulting. I'll be happy to do the install for you. We'll get you a good template installed. I'll even tweak it for you to make it look more like your own. More like your own. I can do all those things and more if you just contact me. Once again, my cell number, 859-620-2644, 859-620-2644. Email Cliff at podcastanswerman.com. And one last thing, you want to leave some questions to be answered here on the podcast? You do that via voicemail line. Our voicemail line is area code 859-795-4067. That's 859-795-4067. Until next time, folks, thanks for listening, and tell somebody else about the Podcast Answer Man over at podcastanswerman.com.